This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform for building your website. When I pick topics to cover for this channel, I try to provide examples from critically acclaimed works from some of the best filmmakers of all time. A lot can be learned from greatness, but maybe a lot can also be learned from, well, a lack of greatness. In honor of In-Depth Cine getting to 200,000 subscribers, I'd like to do something different and take a look at the making of a film by an unlikely auteur, which many consider to be the worst of all time.
What makes you say that?
The Room. Here we go. Like any notable tale, the story of The Room came about due to the meeting of two unlikely friends. Greg Sestero developed an early love for film when he was young, going so far as to write a sequel to Home Alone when he was 12 years old, including an acting role for himself. He worked as a model, picked up a role in an episode of a TV show, and scored a couple of commercials. In an attempt to further his career, he attended an acting class in San Francisco. This is where he met Tommy Wiseau. Not much is known about Tommy. Greg partnered up with Tommy in class despite his tendency to give bizarre, over-the-top performances. They rehearsed sections from plays together, which they would perform for the class, and struck up a friendship, bonding over a shared love of James Dean.
You're tearing me apart!
Despite his very thick Eastern European accent, he claimed to originally be from New Orleans.
That's from New Orleans.
Where?
He drove a $60,000 Mercedes-Benz, wouldn't reveal his age nor the source of his wealth, although it does appear that he had a clothing company, Fashion Street USA, and handed out cards from this business. During one of his classes, Tommy had shot an 8mm short film entitled Robbery Doesn't Pay. He had dreams of becoming an actor and a filmmaker. Together the friends decided to move to LA, where Tommy was already renting an apartment. Tommy bounced some of the ideas for films he had off Greg, such as the story of a vampire movie with the amazing title, The Vampire from Alcatraz, King of Vampires. This project never got off the ground. While Greg's acting career gradually progressed, Tommy struggled to land any roles or even get any callbacks. Fed up, he decided to write his own screenplay, a drama about a love triangle, which was reportedly autobiographical, called The Room. Upon reading the script, Greg offered his opinion. I had told Tommy what I thought about The Room several times, which is that the script didn't make any sense. Characters' motivations changed from scene to scene.
What are you, nuts?
Sorry.
Important plot points were raised and then dropped,
I definitely have breast cancer.
and all of the dialogue sounded exactly the same,
Oh, hi, Johnny.
Oh, hi, Mark. Oh, hi, Mike. Oh, hi, Danny.
which is to say it sounded exactly like Tommy's unique understanding of the English language. But nothing I said would ever change his view of The Room, so what did it matter? Nonetheless, The Room began its pre-production journey, securing funding from the only source willing to back the project, Tommy himself. He created a production company, Wiseau Films, where he did everything from acting as the administrative assistant under the pseudonym of John to being the legal department. The credits did include two other executive producers. However, one was a much older English teacher who had never been involved in any film prior or since, and the other EP had been deceased for years already by the time of production. Tommy brought on Greg as the film's line producer, the person who manages the daily operations of a film shoot, despite Greg not knowing what a line producer even did.
It seems to me like you're an expert, Mark.
No, definitely not an expert.
When it came to casting, Tommy of course gave himself the lead, and Greg organized auditions for the other roles. He cast an actor called Dan, who Tommy incorrectly always called Don, as Mark, the supporting character.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Philip Helderman was cast as the adolescent Denny, despite the fact that the actor was 26 and actually older than many of the other actors who were playing adult characters in the film. Initially, they found it difficult to cast the oddly named Chris R., the drug dealer character.
What kind of drugs do you take?
They considered doubling up and having Scott Holmes, who'd been cast as Mike, play two roles and put on a strange Indiana Jones-like disguise for Chris R. to prevent his double appearance getting noticed. They decided against it. While holding auditions for other characters, Tommy had to insist upon some actors that the film they were trying out for wasn't porn.
No, stop you. I don't make porn.
With things falling into place, kind of, Greg and Tommy met up the day before the first day of shooting to go over things. At this final pre-production meeting, Tommy managed to convince Greg to play the role of Mark, which had already been cast to Dan, or Don, by offering Greg a large acting fee and a new car. This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Squarespace provides the tools to easily build and manage your website or online store. Setting up a site on Squarespace is quick and intuitive. It guides you down the path of beautiful design, making the process of creating an aesthetically pleasing portfolio for your work simple. I like using their blogging tools to schedule, publish and share in-depth cine articles and videos on my site. Check out squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/indepthcine to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. On the first day of shooting, Tommy was 4 hours late. This was a trend which would continue throughout. Rather than shooting on location, Tommy made the unusual decision to shoot everything in a studio. Exteriors were shot in the studio parking lot with the help of a green screen. They shot at the small Highland Avenue lot of Burns and Sawyer, a Hollywood rental house. This offer was extended by the owners due to the unheard of decision by Tommy to purchase, rather than rent, the film production gear. A financial decision which made no logical sense.
We don't rent, we buy.
It was reportedly a $1 million investment. However, he took this illogical decision a step further by deciding to shoot the movie simultaneously using both 35mm and digital capture. This doubled the cost of shooting as it required two separate crews, one to run the film camera and one to run the HD camera. Despite the crew's insistence that he would either use the 35mm or the HD digital footage for the final cut, not both, Tommy went ahead with this bizarre decision anyway. He purchased two Panasonic HDX 900 digital cameras, one Arriflex BL4 35mm camera, and a dozen cinema lenses which included Cooke zooms. Most of the movie was shot off a dolly. Raphael Smudger, an experienced French-born DP who mainly worked in reality TV, was hired as cinematographer on the film. He mainly lit the sets using strong sources of hard light, apparently undiffused, coming through windows. These lights often cast hard shadows against other actors, which made it pretty obvious where the source of light was, and wasn't the most naturalistic way of illuminating a set. At times, the DP would retreat from the camera to the director's monitor, which was away from the set, while Tommy was performing a scene, saying that he wanted to view the lighting from a monitor. However, really, it was because he struggled to stop himself from laughing while Tommy performed his lines. He would routinely forget the lines that he wrote while acting. It became so painful at times that it took them almost 3 hours, many rehearsals, and 32 takes to get one 7-second line.
I did not hit her. It's not true. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
Tommy also appeared to lack any awareness of the correct emotional tone when performing.
I beat her up so bad she ended up in a hospital on Guerrero Street.
The job of making sense of the script and ensuring continuity fell to script supervisor Sandy Schler, who had changed lines from the screenplay to make them more intelligible, block the scenes, and generally act as a kind of first assistant director. The rooftop set was created by using 3 separate styrofoam walls backed with cheap plywood, hastily erected in the parking lot. Why the luxury apartment rooftop had a corrugated iron doorway, no one quite knew. To get alternate angles, the crew would move the 3 walls around to create the illusion of 4. Sometimes their alignment was, questionable. Since Tommy usually showed up late to set, most of the rooftop scenes had to be shot in midday or afternoon light, where the sun cast unflattering shadows on faces. To combat this, the cinematographer used lots of overhead diffusion with textiles on frames to soften the light, which ate up shooting time. When Don, cast as Mark, who hadn't been told that Greg had been cast in his place, played out his scenes on the first day of shooting, they didn't roll any film on his takes. He soon found out, lost his temper with Tommy, and Tommy fired him, along with another actress cast as Michelle. His reasoning for firing her as well was so that it would prevent any legal issues, although what he meant by this exactly, no one was sure about. These weren't the only people to leave. Fed up after weeks of shooting, Raphael, the DP, insisted that unless Tommy hired a proper line producer to handle the running of the shoot, he would walk. When his demand wasn't met, he quit, followed by his crew, who also resigned in protest. Thus the room hired its second DP, a guy called Graham, who was recently out of film school. After Graham walked around the set for the first time, he immediately concluded that the production must be a money laundering scheme. Tommy's second DP didn't last long. His reason for quitting was the result of another strange financial decision from Tommy. He refused to rent a generator for $200 a day to power the lights, and instead lost hours every day as a result while the crew came up with workaround solutions for power, which was of course far more costly. After days of promising a generator and not delivering, Graham walked off the set. This led one of the few remaining crew members from the camera department who didn't walk off, Todd Barron, to step up as the third and credited cinematographer. He managed to get through the remainder of the shoot. Upon starting the edit, the obvious decision was made to dismiss all the HD footage that they had unnecessarily shot, and they only used the 35mm takes. A problem soon presented itself: sound. Through a combination of the inexperienced sound recordist, an inability to sync up some of the dialogue sound to the footage, and Tommy's struggle with saying the lines, a lot of the sound was unusable. They therefore embarked on using ADR, re-recorded dialogue in a controlled environment, to replace much of the location sound. This wasn't exactly masterfully done. Rather than carefully controlling the edit through deliberate cutting, the decision on when and what to cut to had to be decided by the parts of the footage they had which were actually usable. The pacing of the edit is another factor that makes the film feel so odd. Certain scenes without much substance, such as the numerous sex scenes, take up about 10% of the total running time. They really go on forever.
Anyway, how is your sex life?
Also, you can't not laugh at the beyond cliché music choices. With some digital trickery and some questionable compositing, what is meant to be the San Francisco skyline was added to the rooftop scenes for the final touches. The final budget, with its strange mix of gratuitous overspending, while at the same time being miserly cheap, ended up being estimated at around a staggering $6 or $7 million. Tommy marketed the film by renting a large billboard with his face on it for $5,000 a week. To some crew's surprise, the final film actually opened in a cinema. Its box office take? $1,900. Over the years, something interesting started to happen. It was so badly made and strange that it amassed a cult following. Fans from all over the world became enamored with it, and it entered popular culture. Over time, it actually managed to recoup its budget. Perhaps this movie didn't go exactly how he intended it, or maybe the problem was that it did go the way he intended it. Either way, the best worst movie of all time gave Tommy Wiseau his dream of fame and celebrity that he'd spent his whole life seeking. I'd just like to say a special thanks to everyone who supported the channel through its journey to 200,000 subs. Making these videos is always a pleasure, and I hope that you continue to enjoy and hopefully take something away from them. Until next time, thanks for watching and goodbye.